Watch this. The exact body framework that separates a clean forehand attack from the arm swinging. Mess most recreational players never fix. Today we're building the forehand drive framework from the ground up, a grip, stance, and body posture for adult recreational players. I put a lot of emphasis on proper form. Some people push back and say certain movements are just match adjustments. I accept that theory, but when you're first learning, you need a standard foundation. You have to learn step by step, just like textbook knowledge. You need a proper baseline first. Then, when you face different situations, you use what you've learned to solve problems. Without that standard foundation, you'll find your stroke looks different on every single ball, there's no consistency. If you've been playing less than 2 or 3 years, I honestly believe you shouldn't rush to add power or jump into competitive matches. Spend that time making your fundamentals solid. I train junior players on the provincial team, and this is exactly how we approached it. When I worked with second and third tier junior players, their future ceiling depended entirely on how clean and rational their foundational framework was. After that base is set, you build match experience, develop rhythm, and add adjustment ability. For us recreational players, most of us aren't trying to win tournaments, we're exercising and enjoying the sport. Proper form gives you a higher ceiling, but more importantly, it prevents injury. I see people discussing shoulder pain, elbow pain, knee pain all the time. Elbow and shoulder issues especially come directly from flawed mechanics. Shoulder pain should never appear from correct table tennis technique. Knee issues may come from age or footwork problems, but shoulder and elbow pain are caused by incorrect stroke mechanics. So today, let's focus on building a proper forehand drive framework. Next, let's start with grip. First, penhold grip and the common forehand problems it creates. Many penhold players develop a raised elbow, and it traces back to the thumb and index finger. When you grip too far forward in a small clamp style to stabilize the racket for blocking, the tendons in your fingers connect up through your arm. That tight forward grip forces your elbow to flare out on the forehand side. So in the penhold system, you must adjust your grip when switching between forehand and backhand. When transitioning from forehand to backhand and back, you absolutely must shift the racket face. That's point one. Point two is for shakehand players. Your grip may already be a deeply ingrained habit, but if it's wrong, it will cap your potential on both sides. Let me show you. Look at the V of my hand, the web between thumb and index finger. If I pinch the blade so the V sits off-center toward the forehand side, that's a forehand-biased grip. Watch what happens to my stroke shape when I swing from this position. With a forehand-biased grip, the ball comes off the racket with a wiping, brushing action. You end up sweeping across like this. Now if I shift so my index finger dominates and the V moves to the backhand side, watch, the forehand becomes a hooking motion. With a forehand-biased grip, you get this swiping action, and then the backhand suffers because you can't switch fast enough. With a backhand-biased grip, your forehand ends up hooking. That's why in the shakehand system, neutral grip placement matters enormously. We're going to be very detailed today. I want you to get the foundational theory correct first, so that when we link movements together later, everything flows.
非常的仔细啊，希望球友们能够把基础理论的理论知识，首先要让它变得正确。我们在后续的动作里面，当你的食
Now
指
watch
一翘起
carefully.
的时候，
When my
你看我的
index
这个拍
finger
点，
lifts up like
大
this,
家仔细
look at the
看看，
racket face,
是不是
see
就
how the
像我一
racket
样
head
翘
tilts
了？
upward.
我肘下来，它
Even if
也
I
是
drop
翘
my
的。
elbow down,
因
the
为
head
你
still
手的
points up
形态
because
是
the
这样
finger
的，
position dictates
你
the
手
blade
的
angle.
形态是什么样
Whatever
的？
shape your fingers
你
take,
这
the
根
racket
手指的
follows.
形态是什么
Even
样
with the
的？
elbow
你的
tucked
拍
low,
子就是
if the
什么样
finger
的。
is raised,
你
the
肩
racket
肘
head
再下
stays
来，你
tilted.
手指这样，
This is the
再
biggest
低，
issue.
它拍头
Shakehand
它也是
players
翘
are
的。
especially prone to this wrist cocking problem.
这就是最大的问题，横板特别容易出现。我们横板特别容易出现翘腕儿，紧吗？
Shakehand
大都是
players
握
tend to
把。
cock the wrist.
直板特别容易
Penhold
出现
players
侧
tend to
手，
flare the
是
elbow.
吧？因为它
Both
的
stem
两
from
手指
finger
的
placement
掐
and
发
tension
随
in the
腕
grip.
和放松程度
You
有
must
关系。
avoid these
所以大家
extremes.
一定要避
For
免我们握
shakehand,
拍上的
the
闭
correct
环。
position feels
所以
awkward at
横板
first
刚开
because
始
that
会很
raised
别扭，因为
index
你这样
finger
你会
gives
感
you
觉
a
有
sense
支
of
撑面
support and
在
control
出
when
击的时候，你
striking.
会感觉打球更有
That
势，
false
从
security
而导
creates
致
the
翘
habit
板
of pushing
推
with a
翘
cocked
板
racket head.
抬翘板推，这些
So
错
on
误
both
习惯产
forehand
生。
and backhand
所以大家
sides,
的
I keep my
反手
index finger
正手
nearly
位和
flat
反
against
手
the
位
blade.
食
Look,
指，你像
almost
我基
completely
本都打
straight.
平了。你看
Why?
我的这根
Because
手
when I
指，
loop, that
是
flatter
基
finger
本打
lets me
平
angle
了。为什
downward
么
more
呢？因为
freely
我拉
and
球的
keeps
时
my
候，我
wrist
平一
relaxed
点
through the
点，
stroke.
我下去的角度和幅度，它能控制我的腕部动作得到放
A
松，
flat finger
让
lets
我
the
的拍
racket head
头转
rotate
动的
more
幅度
freely and
更
fully
加
through the
灵活，
swing.
更加充
So
分。
fix this.
所以大家这个问
Index
题
finger
是
flat on
必
the
须要得
blade,
到改善
thumb
的。
resting on the
这
rubber,
是我刚
and
才
the
说的
V
这
of
个
your
问题。
hand centered on
食
the
指
middle
一
of the
定要
handle.
平，大拇指一定要放球拍上，虎口一定要掐住正中间。
A lot of players stand with their body squared up directly to the forehand side. That's the biggest mistake. When your arm needs to open up and someone hits to the wide line, you can't rotate in time. So here's my standard. Your navel should face roughly the center line of the table, this white line here. Whether you're slightly left or right of it doesn't matter much. But don't plant yourself over on the forehand corner. Watch, this is why so many people pull everything to the left. The contact point ends up too close to the body, and the stroke never fully extends.
人站在正手位，你看为什么很多人打球他都往左发力，就是因为他击球点离球跟身体太近了。他这么做完之后，他自己感觉都没做完，所以他
When you're
只能
jammed,
向
you can
左
only
发力。
push sideways to create hitting space.
更多的
But the
击
real
球空
problem
间。
isn't your hand,
那么
it's
问
your
题在
body.
哪儿？不在手
Your
上，
body hasn't
问题
left
在于
room
你
for
的
the
身体
forehand
上。
strike
你
zone.
的身体
You
没
feel
有
like
给
leaving
你的
that
正
space
手
makes
位
you
置
less accurate,
留出击球
maybe a
位，
bit
因为你
uncomfortable,
觉得留
but
出
you
击
must
球
pay
位置没
attention
有
to
那么
this. There
准
must be
确，
distance
对
between
吧？
your
可
body
能
and the
相对来说
ball.
有点难受，没有那么
Navel
准
aimed
确。
at the center
那么大家要
line,
注
a
意
little
这个
off
问
is
题，
fine,
你的
but your
身
left
体
foot
离
cannot step
球
so
一定
far
要有
over
距
that it
离。那
kills
么
your
我
hitting
们
space.
肚脐的位置对准
If
中
it
线，
does, you're
偏一
locked,
点，这
jammed,
都没
too
有关系。
close,
但
and
是
all
你
your
不能让
force
左
goes
脚踩到这
sideways.
个点，
The
你
second
就会
issue
给自
is
己的击
distance
球
from the
位置
table itself.
卡没了，
For forehand
堵
drives,
死了，
we need to
太
maintain
近了，
proper spacing.
然后就会向左发力。第二个问题呢，就是距离的问题。正手攻球我们要保证距离，因为
At a
水
more
平
basic
越
level,
是
the
基础一点
incoming
的
ball
球，
tends
它
to
这
be
个球给的
softer.
越
Your
软，
partner can't
是
drive
吧？
it deep to your
因为它
baseline,
喂不
they're
到你
just
底
tapping
线
it
去，
over.
它也在
So
碰
you
我。
get half
所
long
以一般
balls
的
and
球
you
台
lean
的
over
球，
the
你不
table
愿
to
意
hit
骑
them.
在球台上去
Over
打。
time, this builds a
那么
pushing
久而久
habit.
之养成了这
Then
种
when a
推
deep topspin
移
ball
到底
arrives,
线的时
you
候，
net
上
it,
面球
that's
还
the
下
classic
了，
sign of
其实
being
就是被
jammed.
顶住的一种表
Here's the
现。
key.
那么我
Regardless of
们
whether the
不
ball
管
is
这个
half long
球
or
对
fully
方给
long,
的是半
any
球还是
topspin
长
ball
球，
will keep
只
traveling
要是
forward
顺
after
球，
the
大家看
bounce.
一下，它一
Unlike a
定会
backspin
往
ball
前
that
走
hugs the
的。
table and
它
drops,
不像下一球，
topspin
可能
always
半球
comes to
抬过
you.
台以
It's
后，
just a
它
matter
就
of
往下
timing.
贴着台面
So
下手。
during rallies,
只要是
maintain your
上面
distance
球，
from the
它
table.
一定会往前走，只是你的时间差而已。所以我们在对攻的情况下，我们要保证跟球台的距离
Here's the
一个
measure.
小
Extend your
臂的
racket
距
until
离。
it touches the table
拍子
edge,
顶到这
then
儿，
pull back
留
one
出了一
forearm
个
length.
小臂，
Your
小臂
elbow
的
stays
手
close
尖
to your
位置
body,
贴住
racket
身
touching the
体，
table. That
拍
gap
子
is your
顶
ideal
住球
forehand
台。
drive position.
这个位置就
Do
是
not
你在
rush the
正手
timing just to feel quick. If you develop a rushed, lunging habit, it can take years of conscious effort to correct. Anyone can hit a ball fast. You could hand a racket to a 5-year-old and they'd lunge at it. The real skill, for amateurs and professionals alike, is learning to slow down. Slowing your rhythm is what separates a good player from a wild one. So lock in your correct distance. Do not stand too close, because the moment a deep ball comes in, you're stuck. If you're too close and the ball comes long, you'll inevitably rush. You won't have time to complete your stroke, so you lunge, watch, see how this error forms. The ball goes deep, I'm late, I have to force something out. Because I was waiting too close, I'm already behind. So you rush, and rushing becomes a
所以
habit.
你一定会抢
Every
点，
ball, every
一抢
timing,
点，
every rhythm turns chaotic and
它就会
uncontrolled.
形成一个
That's why during forehand drives, we
习惯，
deliberately slow the
所
rhythm
有的
down.
点，所有的节奏都
Letting
很正点，
yourself
全是
play
乱
at a
七八
calmer
糟的，
pace
张牙舞
is the
爪的。
single most
所以我们在
important
正手
key
攻
for
球的时候，
recreational
就要把
players.
节奏放缓，让自己的节奏慢下来，才是我们业余的一个关键点。重视一下自己
After
的身
that,
体
now
状态。
let's talk about
身体
body
状态第
posture.
一个，我们的
First, the
膝盖
knees
是
must
肯定要
bend.
屈膝的。
For adult
对于
players,
我
I'm
们
not
成人
asking
来
for a
说，我
deep
们不要
athletic
求他
crouch like a
像专业一
professional,
样，
but
但
your
是我
knees
们的
need at
膝
least
盖
a slight
最起
bend
码
like
得
this,
弯曲
from
一点。
standing straight to just
就像我
softening the
现在一
legs.
样，从直立
Second,
状
the
态到
abdomen.
微
Your
的
stomach
弯曲
should
一
not
点。
push forward
第二
flat.
个就是
It
我的
tucks
身体，
inward, pulled back
我
slightly.
们都说了，
You
这个
draw it
肚
in.
子啊，它始终不是
Third,
向
look at
前
my
的，
overall
平行
posture.
的，
My
它要
upper body
凹
tilts
进去，
gently forward from the
是不
hips,
是？要
creating a
收进
compact,
来，
ready
肚
frame.
子。第三个，你看我的整个身体凹
If
进
you
来
hollow
以
your
后，
back
我这
inward
样，
like this,
你说
ask
你腰累
yourself,
不
does your
累？
lower back get
肯定
tired?
会出现
Of
非
course
常
it
疲
does.
劳的状
So the
态。
key for the
所以
waist is to
腰的
relax
动
it.
作
Go from a
收
tight, locked
含，
state to a
让
loose
自己
one.
的腰从一
Bend
个
the knees
紧绷的
slightly,
状
draw the
态到
belly in a little,
放
lean
松
the
的状
upper
态。
body
这
forward
样
just a
就是我
touch
们
and stay
正常乒乓
relaxed.
球的身体动
Watch,
作。
I'll hit a couple.
腿弯曲一
See how
点，
the movement looks
肚子往回
coordinated
收
and
一点，
effortless. That's
是
what
不
a
是？
natural,
然后
relaxed
同时
body
上半
action
身
looks
前
like in
倾一
table
点，放松
tennis.
一点。哎，我这样就可以保证，你看我给大家打两个，你看我这个动作最起码，你看，哎，别人一看，哎，身体动作挺好啊，哎，挺协调，对，很放松，很协调。